FM.
Joining us this evening as we spotlight conservation and how cutting-edge satellite tools are empowering nations to not only conserve but drive sustainable development is Earth observation data scientist at Digital Earth Africa, Mpho Sadiki. Ms. Sadiki, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wetlands are often described as the kidneys of the planet. Why are they so central to our continent's resilience just in terms of food security, water resources and biodiversity?
Yeah, so wetlands are actually very, very important. And in simpler terms, they're areas where water meets land. And this water is either present at the surface or near the surface part of the year or the entire year, and they include different areas such as marshes, swamps, floodplains, peatlands, and even some shallow lakes are considered wetlands. And they're incredibly important for both people and nature, and this is because they act like natural sponges that absorb excess rainwater, which reduces the risk of floods, but they also filter and clean water, which means that the water is then able to store nutrients, and the water has all these pollutants removed to provide safer water for communities. And in addition to that, they store carbon, which is very essential to regulating our climate. And of course, more generally, they provide home to a large variety of plants, birds, fish, and other wildlife. So these are very important ecosystems that we have amongst us. So we really need to work really hard to protect them.
And the health of these ecosystems, how does it link to sustainable development, Mpho?
So with healthy wetlands, we have healthy people, we have a healthy environment, we have healthy fauna and flora. So if those aspects of our environments are able to thrive, it means we're able to have better lives. We're able to sustain ourselves as people, and our environment is actually able to survive in the face of a changing climate, and in the face of a growing population where we're encroaching on areas where these wetlands are. But if we know where they are and we're monitoring properly, we're able to stay away from these areas, preserve and conserve them and protect them so that they stay with us as we continue to live on this beautiful planet.
Digital Earth Africa recently launched tools like the Wetlands Insight Tool and the Monitoring Workflow. What are these tools and how do these change the game for conservation on the ground?
So part of what Digital Earth Africa does is provide what we call continental scale services. And some of them are very useful for wetlands. I'll give an example of our water observations from space product, which uses more than 30 years of satellite data to show where water is present, how it moves, and how often these areas are inundated. And we additionally built on that with the Water Bodies Monitoring Service, which identifies over 700,000 individual water bodies across the African continent. So with this service, we're able to track how their surface area is changing over time, looking at lakes, ponds, reservoirs, segments of rivers, and of course, wetlands. But while we understand that these continental services are very important, when it comes to wetlands, it's more than just looking at open water, because wetlands are shaped by their soils, their vegetation, and the landforms on which they occur. And some may be wet only part of the year or are connected to groundwater. So this is a very complex ecosystem that just looking at open water does not do justice. So that's why we went into creating what we call the wetland workflow, which helps you create a comprehensive inventory of your wetlands as a country. We're specifically targeting countries because we've noticed that African countries are struggling with knowing where their wetlands are, so they're unable to offer the needed protection and advocate for the wise use of these very precious wetlands. So we're now leveraging the power of the cloud through Digital Earth Africa to create a workflow that countries can own and use to regularly update their wetland inventories as we get more satellite data with time.
Are the existing wetland inventories outdated, and hence the need for the innovation and for these new tools to especially for countries with limited capacity to enhance their ability to preserve and monitor their resources more effectively?
Absolutely. So I did a study where I looked at all the reports that African nations are submitting to the Ramsar Convention, which is a body that advocates for the wise use of wetlands. And we noticed that African countries just don't have wetland inventories, and those that do are not updating them regularly. And as you said, that is because of a lack of resources. We don't have the capacity, we don't have the money, and just the whole endeavor to create an inventory and consequently update it costs a lot of money and time. So that is the main issue that Africa is facing right now. And we feel as we have this great infrastructure that allows or is democratizing the use rather of Earth observation, we want African countries to leverage it and use it and create these very important inventories that will help them understand where their wetlands are and how these are changing over time.
Mpho Sadiki is Earth Observation Data Scientist at Digital Earth Africa. She joins us this evening, sharing her insights and expertise, spotlighting wetlands, and in particular looking at how conservation has been improved. The capacity to conserve the wetlands have been improved with the release of some cutting-edge satellite tools. You're welcome to share your thoughts on 0829 904 904. Earth observation can seem maybe abstract to policymakers. How do you translate data into decision-ready insights that governments, authorities can act upon, Mpho?
So, I think most of the time when I speak of Earth observation, people are not quite sure what I'm talking about. But in its simplest terms, think of it as we're looking at the Earth from far, be it from satellites, be it from drones or from airplanes, but in the case of Digital Earth Africa, we focus on satellite data. And what satellites are doing, they're constantly orbiting the Earth and they're taking pictures every time. So there's loads of this pictures available, but most of the time they're in their raw form that normal people are not able to understand what is happening. So we at Digital Earth Africa take that those 3 decades of data and transform it into insights that they're able to understand. Instead of giving them a picture, we're giving them a product that tells them how water is changing, how the vegetation is changing, how our urban areas are growing, how our coastlines are shifting. So we're making what we call decision-ready products to remove that hurdle of having the knowledge and the technical ability to understand remote sensing data as it comes in its raw form, but rather giving people a product that they can clearly understand at first glance. You can clearly see if a dam is losing its extent. You can clearly see if an area is getting drier. So that's what we're doing at Digital Earth Africa.
I suppose the data and the up-to-the-minute data provides that clarity as well. I suppose when one looks at AI, machine learning tools, it provides a similar opportunity around monitoring species or even change detection around shifts maybe in vegetation, which you mentioned earlier is quite important to ascertain the health of a wetland.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, our wetland workflow is a machine learning workflow. So it's a set of what we call notebooks, which are almost like pages of code that we've already written, and you just need to change a location and a time. But they do use a machine learning algorithm that you train on existing data. Although it's poor data, it's put in a way that it's able to learn from what exists and predict even better in terms of what is on the landscape. So yes, machine learning is central to a lot of what we do at Digital Earth Africa.
How under pressure are the wetlands in South Africa, Mpho?
The wetlands in the world, not just South Africa, wetlands in the world are under extreme pressure. In fact, we see reports of stats such as since the 1970s, we've lost almost 35% of all the world's wetlands. So when you think of things like that and you hear people talking about how wetlands are being lost at 3 times the rate that forest ecosystems are being lost, and we consider those to be as ecosystems that are being lost quite rapidly. So if wetlands are being lost at 3 times the rate, you can only just imagine how much is happening. And it's because of simple things like we're using them for agriculture. We're draining them because we want to build there. But of course, there's also an issue of climate change where we are having less rain while the pressure of extraction is increasing. So wetlands are under extreme pressure at the moment.
You mentioned climate change. I would imagine that monitoring tool can certainly help countries adapt to these extremes of intensifying floods and intensifying temperature fluctuations.
Yes, absolutely. That's the whole point of Digital Earth Africa, actually. Central to our work is climate resilience. We want countries, we want regions, areas, even normal civilians to have access to this information to just help them be more resilient when it comes to climate adaptation, because you can't adapt to something you don't know. So with this decades-long time series data, you can see what's been happening since the 80s. And from that, you can almost guess what the trajectory of this particular environmental phenomenon that you're looking at is. And that's why we're democratizing this use of Earth observation and making it easily and freely available to the people so we can actually make these informed decisions in the face of climate change.
Earth observation data scientist at Digital Earth Africa, Mpho Sadiki, joins us this evening, sharing her insights and expertise. You're welcome to join us too. 0829 904 904. Mpho, I see the Wetlands Monitoring Workflow is already active in countries like Kenya, Uganda, and Senegal, South Africa too. What has emerged already from these early implementations?
We have tested this workflow in areas where we have what we consider good training data for our machine learning algorithms, such as South Africa. But we have instances like Senegal and Uganda where we're seeing that we don't have good data, but we're able to train on what we consider poor global data, because this is data that was created for the globe, and these kind of data sets don't really do well in Africa. We're not well represented there. So we're able to use that data and actually get pretty decent results. And the idea is, considering we're using not so high spatial resolution data, we're using data from Sentinel-2 satellites, which are only 10-meter resolution, we're still able to get that intrinsic potential of the landscape for wetlands to exist, and then consequently take that intrinsic potential into a typology where we can see what the different types of wetlands that exist in that landscape are. So we've seen that you don't necessarily need to have the best data. You can make do with what you have, and Digital Earth Africa is enabling countries to actually do that at this moment.
And I suppose also quite important that you mentioned as well, particularly at the recent Ramsar COP, is that these tools were designed for the continent. So great that there are African-led solutions. Lastly, Mpho, what's your vision for how nations could leverage this data over the next decade to really safeguard and conserve ecosystems while also accelerating sustainable development?
I think with Africa, the first thing is for us to just actually use this data. We're trying to embed as Digital Earth Africa within governments on the continent, because we want the full potential of Earth observation data to be unleashed. Because at the moment we see that it's not being used to its full potential on the continent. So if countries can use our decision-ready products and also build their own tools within this Digital Earth Africa infrastructure, we see that we will be able to solve a lot of our issues when it comes to sustainable development, because we'll be able to see what has been happening and forecast what can come in the future and what is currently happening right now, so we can make these informed decisions that will make sure we achieve our sustainable development goals as well.
New Earth observation tools definitely set to empower wetlands conservation, recently released at the Ramsar COP, helping us understand the benefits of these tools. Earth observation data scientist at Digital Earth Africa, Mpho Sadiki. Thank you, Mpho. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Smile.